there's one question. I don't know if you want to talk about this, but
Sure.
I know you talked about it in 2017 with Penguins on his podcast. The furry stuff. I want to know about furry culture and
what about it?
In the podcast you said you were going to look into or try to look into figure out where your furry origins or why you like furry stuff so much. Did you ever follow up on that?
There is no like definitive way. There's like I don't know. There's nobody controls their own desires. It is definitely like a kind of like an identity thing. It's a comfort thing. And then by proxy through identity, it's also a sexual thing for me, not for everybody. There are when you are developing as a human being at very young ages, there are bits of information being processed in your brain like a sponge. Some of these bits of information are very dead set and hard coded. Some are not. The ones that are pertaining towards
desires,
identity and sexuality, and not. I wouldn't just say desires. I would say very literally identity,
right?
And sexuality. Those are things that get hard coded in an unchangeable way. Because if they didn't, that if let's say if let's say human beings had more agency over their sexuality and it was much more easier to control in terms of your desires, then we wouldn't exist as a species because it literally has to be an unchangeable strong urge. Otherwise we wouldn't reproduce throughout evolutionary history, right? There's two strongest desires of the human being or any surviving creature right now is either reproduction or fear of death. So those things have to be inherent. They can't be changed. Perhaps there are outliers, perhaps there are exceptions to the rule, but in general, that's how a species survives, basically. Human beings, in terms of like what we subject or what we expose developing human beings to, children, everything that we've been doing essentially has been like really experimentational. Things like television, things like media, things like animation, things like imagination. These are things, even like reading like a storybook with like pictures in it or something to a child. These are all new things in terms of like the lineage of human history. We really had no way of understanding what kind of impact or effect it would have on developing human beings. So it's possible that if you think of imagination, pre-animation sort of visual representations, if you could imagine like raising a child of like, oh, there's blah blah blah, they would use like real life examples or like show a relative or something, and maybe something would imprint onto that child's brain in terms of like what their identity is, or like with human beings, or maybe it's something to do with their sex drive. But there's something subconscious happening where it's like something goes into a slot and then it's like there forever. However, with the way that television, internet, fiction, media, all of these new things that whether we should be doing it or not are kind of involved in raising children, whether it's just like putting them in front of the television, whether it's reading them a storybook or like a stuffed animal or something like that. Perhaps there was a moment in my development where the spot in my brain that's reserved for identity of what I'm supposed to feel like I belong to, rather than just going to human being next to me, went to either an anthropomorphic animal character in a book or a film or like a stuffed animal or something. And from that point, it's unchangeable. So,
like, how many people probably got attracted to like Lola from Space Jam, let's say, in there? Like, you have millions and millions of kids watching that show. How many of them had like, let's say, a similar effect, right? Like, because we don't have.
Depending on it's where we would have to do more research. We would have to find out if there's like an exact age where this happens. We would have to find out if there's something that would trigger it. If let's say there's if let's say a child would have to see something that people would consider to be like sexualized in order for that to happen, we don't know. It's really not what I'm explaining is not like a hard science. It's a lot of philosophy and a lot of theory, but that's the way that I can best understand it or have best rationalized it, I guess.
What did you think of them censoring, what Lola looked like in the new Space Jam?
They nerfed her tits.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's kind of a weird thing.
Ugly.
Yeah.
Her tits don't even matter. They made her face ugly. As a person that doesn't even want to fuck her anyway.
I haven't seen it in a bit, but yeah, that was just a weird thing. Like, this is how far we've come. Like, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, they made her ugly, and then they didn't give her any character motivations or reason to be there, and she kind of just like hovered around the male characters. And then they did a butt shot of her anyway. Oh yeah, I remember watching your review. Yeah. What the hell was that? Yeah. Like why did they? Yeah, like you're saying one thing and you're doing another. So.
I mean, I think it's probably like so many people working on a project, so many people conflicting ideas.
And yeah, I mean, you should have like a consistent vision, but whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I don't know. To me, there's so many different things we can talk about, but to me, like that stuff was just so, I don't want to say random, but you don't hear people talk about a lot. I only see like internet historian videos about like rainforest or whatever the festival was. Sure. And I'm like, that's the vibe I get from like that community, when in reality maybe that's not it.
There's a good amount of misinformation in that video, and also like you have to understand that the furries being like memes or whatever, and also a lot of people just hating furries because they're different. You have to understand that like there's when something happens that is shareable in a cringe sort of way, when some furry does something that's like super autistic, or some furry did something that's like inappropriately sexual or something, people go out of their way to share it. You have to understand that.
I mean, that's what happened with Rick and Morty, right?
Go check out like any fucking porn website of non-furries and tell me what those fucking categories are. Like, you guys are all fucking perverts too. But you don't. Nobody goes online on Twitter and be like, oh look, these like 19 people who aren't furries came on a piece. Like, of course that happened. Like on Pornhub. Like, I don't have to look this shit up. Like, you people are doing all that shit too. It's just this stupid fucking game that people play where they pretend like they're the only like if somebody does something sexual, like, oh no, they have a penis. Oops. Like the fact that like someone can be naked and have a picture of them show up online naked, and that can like hurt their career. That's seriously fucked up. People need to like re-examine.
Yeah, that's really crazy.
They're in. Like that's nonsense. Like if people want to do shit that's consensual, whatever. I don't care if it's weird. You can't rationalize desires like that. You can't rationalize fetishes. You can't rationalize, identity. It's just shit that people feel, and as long as it's not hurting anybody else, then whatever. Fuck off. Move to a country that doesn't have freedom if you don't like it.
America. Sorry, I'd say that. Like Rick and Morty is another example, right? Remember that stupid video with the Pickle Rick? The guy stands up in the fucking McDonald's. I think after that,
was funny.
That was great. But like after that, the movement was like Rick and Morty fans, these big brain alphas that are like they're trolling, obviously, but like you have to be a high intellect. That's where those memes came from, right? Mm-hmm. Which was in counter to those videos.